Well, hello and welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. Today, we're very excited to continue our series on giving related interviews. Dr. Emilie Socash is with us here today from the Nonprofit Help Center, an organization that helps dozens and dozens of nonprofits all over the country figure out ways to optimize their capacity. And normally when you talk about nonprofits and capacity, you're talking about giving capacity, but Emilie's work focuses on an entirely different kind of capacity. Emilie, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the Nonprofit Help Center and what you do to help these nonprofits.
Sure. Well, you kicked it off in the perfect way by saying that we are really focused on building up the capacity of nonprofits. Now, we're recording this at the end of 2021, and this really is the giving season. And giving and fundraising and revenue generation, those are specific capacities of a nonprofit. My organization works with nonprofits on building up their capacities across a wider swath of abilities. So the word capacity, it might technically be true, but it might not be the best description for our emphasis. So I think of capacity like ability. And so really, the way that we work with our clients is we look at how can we help them improve how they do what they do. So whether that is an organization that works with seniors and keeping them in their homes or getting them out and volunteering in the community, or it's an organization that's looking to provide low-income opportunities for pre-K and preschool quality education for our community members, we find that there are universal capacities. And so we work with organizations on building up those capacities or the abilities of the organization itself.
You know, that's kind of interesting or very interesting. I kind of think about what we do in my business similarly, where even though your nonprofits, there can be a huge amount of diversity of the types of missions or visions, like what they actually are trying to accomplish. Well, the same with me. We work with lots of different organizations on their marketing and their advertising. At the end of the day, it's still fundamentally the same thing. You're still trying to reach the right target audience. You're still trying to communicate them in a way that resonates with them, and then convert them into taking some kind of an action. It sounds like there's similar foundational elements in the nonprofit world.
Definitely. And organizational capacity as a concept is not unique to the nonprofit sector. This is something that, as you just said, is relevant to for-profit, it's relevant to government and public service, and it's relevant to the nonprofit world. Because, when we look at how we do whatever it is we're doing, there are these foundational ways of operating, getting the word out, communicating, making decisions, having proper oversight and accountability. All of these are the makings of a good effort, whether you are in the corporate world or you're in the community serving nonprofit world.
So tell us how you got into this. Obviously, I would assume you have quite a background working in nonprofits to be able to walk into any of these nonprofits and be able to advise them on how to be more effective or operationally optimized. How did this whole Nonprofit Help Center get started?
Well, so the way that the Nonprofit Help Center started was really a product of my own professional development. And, when I was a young person, I was not one of those people who had a really direct and distinct path that I was moving forward on. I really liked learning. I really liked reading. And I went about thinking about my path. It kind of looked like a big open field to me. I could go so many directions. The one thing that I was clear on when I was younger is that I really wanted to do something that was meaningful and brought something good into the world. So I've always had that as a consistent thread. I worked my way through college in working in the hospital system. I did that for several years. And once I graduated, I went on to do online marketing for a private college in upstate New York. And after my time there, both with the healthcare industry and with higher education, I realized that nonprofits are my jam. Like, this is where I belong. I want my career path to continue in this sector. And, I was in my 20s. I was at that point in life of moving around a little bit. I moved all over the country, and I ended up settling down in Cleveland, Ohio. And this opportunity, through, how these things happen, a friend of a friend of a friend said, I got you an interview. And it was for a development position, so a fundraising position, with an organization called the Jewish Community Federation of Cleveland. Now, I didn't really have any ties to this organization. I had never set out to work in the Jewish community, but I knew that I wanted to stay in the nonprofit sector. And I also knew that I had to do things like buy food and pay rent and those sorts of things. So I took this position. That was one of those critical moments in my journey that I look back to still today, some 20 plus years later, as one of those, I went on the right path for me. My path started to take shape.
And it was just luck. Your friend just got you an interview, and she didn't even know about what you wanted to do with your life or anything. She just said, hey, there's an opportunity over here at this federation.
Check this out. I know the development director. And in fact, the guy who headed up the development department, who now is a dear friend, but at that time we didn't know each other, and he was not in the mood to interview me. This was clearly an inconvenience. And apparently I made a good impression, because I was, hired shortly thereafter. And I spent several years with that organization in increasing levels of responsibility, and really learning and going through the paces of what is it like to work with a really productive and effective and high capacity organization. This was a nonprofit that at the time, the budget was somewhere between $35 and $40 million. There were 150 staff members. That's a good size. And that's a great size. Yeah. And it's a great place to learn. And it was a great place to really understand how a nonprofit can work and can be effective in the community. I moved down to the Tampa Bay area about 15 years ago, and I continued in the sector, and I continued working in the Jewish community, because by this time I thought, well, now I've got it figured out. I know how to do this. And I made this switch to working with a very, very small organization. And it was the right thing at the right time. Now, if you had ever asked me, did I have a deliberate decision-making process through all of this? No, I just saw the next best opportunity, and I said, yeah.
So how does that, for those of us, so there's, obviously you've studied psychology. There's like this spectrum of people who like to plan, and people who are comfortable with whatever comes next, right? So I'm guessing you're somewhere on that whatever comes next kind of spectrum there.
Yeah, we have a lot of conversation about that among my family members, my close family, about our varying levels of comfort with ambiguity. And so from a psychological perspective, ambiguity typically breeds anxiety. However, I am naturally wired to be on the go, for watching for opportunities. And so for me, I never think of it so much as luck, but just as being on the watch to take that leap and to trust that the net will appear. And
so it produces adrenaline.
So far, so good.
Yeah, it's more like adrenaline producing for you. You like that.
I really do like that. And I like having that flexibility. And, when I joined up with the organization I started with in my first days here in the Tampa Bay community, and this small organization, I thought back to my going away lunch that I had at the organization in Cleveland. And I was sitting in this room. I actually got to sit at the head of the table, which was very uncommon. It was quite an honor. And I had my department around me. And I had the person who was in charge of major gifts and her assistant. I had the person who was in charge of young adult giving and his assistant. I had the family giving specialist was there. I had the director of the department, the vice president of our philanthropic operations, all around this table, and probably a half dozen more that I just don't remember. It was a big conference table. And when I started my role at the Tampa Jewish Federation, I realized every single person in that room was now me. I had to be every single one of those roles. And I gave myself about 5 minutes to freak out about it. And then I said, okay, challenge accepted. And again, it was a fantastic growth opportunity for me. And I will say that along the way, with that organization and other organizations, I have had mentors who have believed in me and given me that wide open field to say, hey, you got to bring it, but we're going to give you a lot of opportunity to excel. And so I spent the next, and it was right around that time too, that I really found kind of personal resolution to committing to the nonprofit community. And I completed my master's degree in nonprofit management at that time in the mid to late 2000s. And then I had an opportunity to step up to the role that I always wanted, which was to be an executive director, to be at the helm of a nonprofit. And that was actually for a startup nonprofit in my community in St. Petersburg, Florida. And it was an equity theater company, and it's still thriving. I take great pride in that. And I had the opportunity to not only be the founder of a nonprofit, but also to have my first executive director position be with a startup. I mean, that was a wonderful trial by fire. And again, learning and growth opportunity. And, following that, I took on some additional leadership roles and responsibilities. I found that I really had a knack for stepping in as an executive director to turn nonprofits around. I did that with 2 subsequent organizations. And I realized during those turnaround times that I wanted to use myself as a tool for a broader community impact. I felt really good about what I was doing. I was saying yes to a lot of things. The net was appearing, and I realized I really want to pursue my doctoral degree in organizational leadership psychology.
Can I pause you right there?
Yeah.
So obviously, you just talked about how important leadership is, and being able to utilize your skills as an executive director within an organization. And we speak to a lot of entrepreneurs on the show, and a lot of times entrepreneurs are starting their business in their living room or in their spare bedroom or dining room, right? Just like yourself. Yep. And so when you're the only person, you have to do all the jobs. And personally, I really enjoyed reading a book called The E-Myth, because what it talked about was how to define processes and how to make it to where you could delegate some of those roles. And so how important was it in your background having to play all those roles? And then I suppose you walking into these nonprofits and understanding all the roles probably is a big help for you.
It makes my presence in the nonprofit world very relatable. And I think that having that ability to not only say, oh, I've had 2 decades in the saddle, but to show up as a true partner with our nonprofit leaders is, it's a distinguishing characteristic. And it also shapes the full tone of my work with the Nonprofit Help Center. I think it's kind of my North Star, is to remember that I, as a person, went through this experience, maybe not exactly the same. I definitely have not lived every experience that every executive director or development director or program person has ever had, but I have experienced alongside my colleagues the whole gamut of nonprofit life cycle events, from startup to turnaround to crisis. And it definitely gives me kind of a clarifying lens to partner up with my nonprofit clients.
Yeah. And so you were having success doing that, and then you decided to pursue your doctoral degree.
Yes. And I'll tell you something I don't share with a lot of people that turned out to be one of those, the path was forking and I went the right way. I was thinking about going to law law school. Now, I do consider myself to be totally up to that task. And I reached out to one of my mentors and I asked him, hey, if you were in my shoes, knowing me that as you have for about 10 years now, do you think law school is a good next step? And he said, absolutely not. He said, unless you're looking to go and practice law, why would you do that? You need to do something that really scratches the itch for you. You've always wanted to do more with your leadership. Look for something that speaks to you because you're going to make good use of it regardless of what it was. And when he said that word, leadership, I thought, oh, wow, I need to look for programs that help me not only deepen my own abilities to be a leader, but also to show up for that community and that systems level of leadership that I want to provide to my clients and to my community at large. And so that's how I ended up choosing the program in organizational and leadership psychology. And it changed my life and it changed my perspective.
Let's talk a little bit about some of that psychology, because obviously
Sure.
one of the most important things inside of a nonprofit is the ability to raise money for the nonprofit. And nonprofits typically don't do it the same way that for-profit businesses doing it. You are asking for money, working with philanthropists, you're curating those relationships and all of that. But you actually focused on that in your doctoral degree.
I did.
That behavior and that psychology behind giving. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's very interesting. I'm very interested in that.
Sure. So I'll keep it brief because I could do a whole several hours long presentation on this. I'm sure that I could. Yeah. So as my culminating dissertation, I really went deep on what is the psychology behind altruistic behavior and really behind giving. And so I narrowed my focus from my own experience in the nonprofit world to that critical group of people who are those that made their first gift to the organization and then they disappear. And I really wanted to look at what are the motivational levers at play behind that decision to give once and to not give again, or to give at the same level or to decrease their gift. And so I designed this experiment, and I pulled in the psychological concept of, it's called regulatory focus, if we want to get technical. But the basic idea, you've lived this every day of your life, so it's pretty relatable. As human beings, we each have on board this tendency, we'll call it a tendency, towards being either promotion focused or prevention focused. Now, neither is good or bad, and they're each important in our everyday lives in different ways. So if you're a promotion focused person or a promotion oriented person, it means that on the whole, you typically are looking to work rapidly, effectively, eagerly towards an end result. If you are a prevention oriented or a prevention focused person, you are looking to avoid failure or avoid a bad result. So here's how it looks in the nonprofit world and in our fundraising communications. If I run an organization that is looking to eradicate hunger in my community, I might say, hey, Cords, imagine a day in the future when every family has enough food on their table and they don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from. That's very promotion oriented because we're looking at this ideal future where everybody has enough to eat. But we could have the same conversation in a very prevention lens where I say, Cords, you can be a part of this solution because there are, 25% of our families in our community are food insecure. And we want to reduce those hungry tummies. We want to reduce the anxiety that goes along with it. And so it's really avoiding the unpleasant realities or the unpleasant future. Both of those, they're going towards the same goal. So in my study and in my research, what I wanted to examine was if you are a promotion-oriented person and I spoke the language of promotion to you, would you give more? What do you think? What's your theory?
I would say yes.
That was my hypothesis too, but I was wrong. And what my research found after surveying 250 people blindly through, there's a service online where you can get survey respondents that meet certain criteria. Through this online experiment, I discovered that prevention-focused language, or that avoiding the bad future, that is the most effective on the whole in raising more money from people who have given to your organization in the past.
Why is that?
I was surprised, but it was good data to have.
Well, why was that?
So my theory now, any of this research, I can only make further theories. I can't really point to the rationale for it. But, my theory is that it calls upon our natural tendencies, way back when we were ancient peoples, the fight or flight.
Lizard brain.
It's like that lizard brain. It's like that deeper stuff, right? Where we just want to avoid the bad. If we can avoid the bad, we're doing okay.
It's a good survival it just calls upon that strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So I often refer back to those studies, and in terms of the psychology at play with our nonprofits, it doesn't just show up in our fundraising. It shows up across all of our stakeholders, people who are working in our organization, volunteering, giving to us, advocating for us. All of these psychological levers are at play all the time. And so that really does come up in my work a lot, which to me, if you can't tell, is fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. So that is very, very interesting, because I wonder how your research plays into a little bit of what we do in our agency, because a lot of times we're focused on benefits of things. There was one, just because we're talking here, but I was talking to this one organization, this guy owned a company that did direct mail, and he would use that platform to be entrepreneurial and different things. And so he was looking for an opportunity into the security system world. And he was using like your phrasing about how wouldn't it be great to avoid hunger, right? Wouldn't it be great to be part of the solution to stop this thing from happening? And so what he did was he was able to pull the police database of robberies and house break-ins. And then what he would do is he would do a targeted direct mail. Every time that there was a robbery, he would say, and a home in your neighborhood was broken into, and here's, 3 months free on your security system or whatnot, because he felt like it was very relevant. And in my opinion, it was too. Yeah. But he did not get that good of results with it. And this was back when people really, direct mail was very, very effective. And it's just interesting to me because it's probably a case per case scenario. I would imagine, because depending on the nonprofit, the problem you're solving. I mean, I would assume the more critical, personally, someone who likes to think about the promoter side of things, I do have a very soft spot in my heart when I think about kids with cancer and like, how can I help them solve that problem? I'm really more focused on that than I am like, how do we keep kids from ever getting cancer again? Or anyhow, you could probably help me with the phrasing of it, but
no, you're definitely onto something. There are all of these external factors that we just can't control. So like in my experiment, or in the example of a direct mail piece, there's so many pieces of that we can't control as best as we try. And so when we think about, let's say, using direct mail for fundraising, like I know that arena very well. Is it possible that that person opens it up in the same batch of mail that they've received a billing statement for some medical stuff that they had going on, or their credit card bill, or something genuinely or generally unpleasant? That affects how they consider any request for money. The economic climate, their mood, the weather. There are so many external factors that we can't control for that also have an impact And so it's a bit of a navigation through all of that. One of the things that, if I were to do it again, one thing I would love to experiment with is, and this is something that direct marketers do a fair bit and do it well, is I would love to play with the idea of a priming message. So a priming message is that, message that goes on the front of the envelope, the outside of the envelope. It can be the subject line in our email, like whatever that first short message is, that can actually have an impact on the recipient's psychological frame of mind and can help them flip into promotion or prevention as you wish. And so when it comes to fundraising, helping a prospective donor flip into prevention could very well be that thing that helps them give and give more.
That's a great idea. I would love to hear how that turns out. Can I throw one at you, and maybe you can try this one too? I'd love to test the importance of thank you notes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that probably has a lot to do with why people stop giving.
Mm-hmm. It's very true, and something that a lot of nonprofits struggle with. And I will just give the caveat for all of the nonprofit professionals who are listening right now: your mileage may vary, but it's an unfortunate trend, or maybe it's just an unfortunate habit that the sector gets into. Time is short, our bandwidth is short, and those that give bigger gifts often get more thank you notes, when in fact, those that are giving maybe a more modest gift really are those that often have the greatest potential to be retained and to increase their gifts.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of where the rubber meets the road in the work that you're doing today.
Sure.
So you meet these nonprofits, you curate the opportunity to work with them. When you go into a nonprofit, what are those things that you're observing and picking up on that may say, okay, there's an opportunity, there's an opportunity? How do you determine what those key factors are? And then how do you prioritize them to basically help bring that nonprofit's mission to life? Like, how do you do that? Like, what are those things you're looking for the quickest wins?
Yeah, so I'll start with the end in mind. How does the work of the nonprofit help center bring a nonprofit's mission to life? Now, I'll be clear with you. I am no hero. The heroes are those who are in the leadership roles. I think of myself as kind of like a Sherpa or a guide or a partner along their journey to help them bring out the best that they're ready for. And that's the best that we can hope for. And so when I partner up with a nonprofit, I actually, while we've been talking a lot about the psychological perspectives, which is often very qualitative, very kind of squishy, and just kind of getting a sense of what's going on, I actually pair that up with a very quantitative tool that I use with almost every one of my clients. It's called the Impact Capacity Assessment Tool, or the ICAT. So this is a tool that's been around for a while. It's something of an industry standard in terms of nonprofit assessment. And it taps into the knowledge of board members and staff members to see what is going well or not so well across 27 different capacity areas. And these fall into 6 general families of ability. So things like learning, leading, financial oversight, managing, that sort of thing. And so we do this. We perform this instrument. It's an online instrument that takes 20 minutes or so. And then the leadership and I sit down and we have this sense-making session. And I will tell you, those are my favorite meetings of my entire week, when I'm sitting down with an executive director, maybe their board president, maybe their CEO or COO, whoever else is part of the dynamic, to really say, okay, so you scored really high on this particular aspect, but not so high on this other one. What meaning do you make from that? What do you think that means about your system? And it's just a point in time measurement, but we use those points of data to really design any sort of people-focused capacity building initiative. So that might be a workshop, it might be coaching, it might be a really curated path on the professional development platform that I launched earlier this year. But we really focus on how do we support the people in the areas that they need the help in to improve how they're doing what they do.
And the name of that assessment again was the ICAP or ICAT?
ICAT, so Impact Capacity Assessment Tool.
I gotcha. And is that a tool that you said it was pretty common knowledge? Is that a tool that nonprofits use on their own?
So it's only for nonprofits, and nonprofit organizations can't actually access it on their own. They have to go through a facilitator like me or any of a few dozen others in our country who are authorized to use it and to help them make sense of it.
And so this assessment sort of uncovers areas where they might be strong or weak, and then you can dive in and sort of figure it out, almost like a blood test.
It's very much like a blood test. So you're going into your doctor and she says, "Oh, I would love to do a full panel." Now, so you know that I'm a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor. So a full panel of whatever that they're measuring. And so that's what the ICAT does. And then just like with your blood test results, your doctor will say, well, let's focus on one or two things at a time to try and improve. Is your cholesterol high? Is something else low? And we really, dial in on a prioritized approach. Let's first look to get, maybe it's employee recruitment and retention. Let's get that in order, because a lot of other things will follow and benefit from that. Or let's focus on strategic planning as a skill and an ability, because you have a lot of things coming up and it looks like things are a little bit untethered right now. How can we build up your ability to get better across the whole team in that particular area?
And so how does a nonprofit figure out that they need help from a facilitator?
That is the trickiest thing. Typically, so a few different ways, a few different things could happen. So you might have a particularly evolved leader in place. So I have a few clients like that where they are executive directors or CEOs, and they just realize, I need help and my people need help. There is something more that needs to exist within my organization than I'm able to give.
Is something like showing up for them where there's a problem, or is it a gut feeling, like, or maybe they've had turnover where maybe some senior leaders have left and they need some leadership, like all of the above?
All of the above.
Yes.
All of the above. Maybe their board is misbehaving. That's a common one that comes to me. And we look we kind of look behind the scenes. We pull back the curtain to see what's going on back here. Why is the board out of sync with the professional leadership? That's always a fun one to navigate. And so you might have a particularly apparent situation. I have one client where one of their big funders cut their funding and said, until you invest in bringing up your abilities operationally, we can't fund you anymore. So that was a big sign. And then it is, that's a scary, scary place to be. But yet that's also a good opportunity for any organization to take steps to make an improvement, because all hope is not lost at that point. It just means, we just need a tune-up. And then, sometimes it can come up from the team. I would say it's a third. The team members themselves are saying, we need something more. And this is really quite common in our smallish to medium-sized nonprofits. So those that have teams of, let's say, 5 or 7 people up to maybe 40 people. That's the sweet spot where they don't necessarily have a right and proper HR person or HR department. They don't necessarily have somebody who's dedicated to their care and keeping or their professional development. And if their executive director or some of their, maybe second in commands or department heads, if they're not particularly tuned in, for good reason, because they're doing their own jobs, that can provide an opportunity where the staff say, I need more help, and I really want to do my job better. And so that's often something that comes onto my radar as well.
Well, all of those things make sense. And it sounds like you've also created some tools, some online tools to help scale some of this information that you've been doing. I'm a big believer in the capability. Like personally, I like meeting with people in person and those types of things, but there are things that we can do. Like, for example, doing a podcast or something like that, where you
Certainly.
can collect and disseminate information at scale through digital means. And you have done that with the Nonprofit Help Center. Could you tell us a little bit about the tools that you've created and what that was like creating this online learning
Yeah,
platform?
definitely. When I started the Nonprofit Help Center almost 4 years ago, I cast a really wide net. And then the 2020 happened. And it really gave me an opportunity to focus in on the capacity assessment that we were just talking about. And when I was having those debrief conversations with leaders, I started hearing, like in 100% of the conversations, I started hearing the same theme. Okay, so now we have an action plan. We're going forward. We're going to do this workshop. We're going to do this type of board retreat. We're going to do this coaching. But I have this development director or accounting person or program manager, and he or she really needs some help on their accountability habits or their decision making. They're great otherwise, but could you just help them with that? And after hearing that quite a few times, I realized that there's only one of me. There's only one of each of my team members. There's only so many in-person things that we can do to hands-on help our nonprofits. And so we spent much of this year developing the Merit Nonprofit Professional Development Platform, which really is that it's kind of like improvement in a box. It's an online micro-learning, anytime, anywhere, accessible platform that's just for nonprofit professionals on those topics that we were just looking at how they measure in that ICAT, that capacity assessment. And it's off to the races. It just went live a few months ago. And it's designed for every team member to do just that, to improve how they do what they do.
And so you've launched this online learning platform.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always curious because we help some people with that. How are you promoting it? Is this a tool that you're using just with the clients that you have and telling them like, okay, I'd like everybody to do this thing, right? And when you're rolling out, like you said, the systems-based approach, are you actively promoting it just out there to the world? What is your approach for making sure people know about it?
Yeah, so you have a solid marketing background. You know about the concentric rings of influence, right? So when we launched it, our primary focus was on friends, family, and our existing clients, really looking to onboard those who already have a high degree of trust in the work that the Nonprofit Help Center does, and with those with whom I and my team members have social credibility. We then expanded it out to others who we have some sort of a connection with. This is largely networked or association-based organizations. So we have one partner who is kind of the mothership across 300 different locations of the same nonprofit. So we're working on what on-ramping that looks like and which centers are the ideal fit. I mentioned to you that nonprofits can't access the ICAT on their own. They have to work with a consultant. So we're inviting all of the ICAT consultants to also use the Merit platform as a part of their toolkit.
Nice.
And then we look to, it's a lot of referral based and a lot of LinkedIn showing up.
Yeah, well, that all makes sense. So before we go, I just want to ask you one last question. It's probably not a short question. What are some of the most important things nonprofits can do on their own to avoid getting or to enhance their effectiveness? Let's put it that way. I'm a promoter. Let's talk about what are some of the most important things they can do to enhance their effectiveness, and help them understand whether or not they need to work with a facilitator like yourself?
Sure. So, two things. One is invest in their people. Our people are our power to make change in the world. So that wonderful mission statement that a nonprofit has, whatever it might be, whatever problem they are trying to solve, or whatever beautiful future that they're creating, it only is as good as the people who are behind it. So investing in their people, I of course have to push professional development, but also anything else that falls into the recruitment and retention space. So that's the first thing. The second thing, in terms of identifying if they need to work with somebody from the outside, like me and my team, I have this tool out there that I love. It's not something I created, but people can visit my website and find a downloadable worksheet of it. It's called the V2 Mom model. Now, it might win an award for the unsexiest acronym ever, but V2 Mom, it's this scenario planning tool, and it really helps anybody in the organization. So executive director to the weekend receptionist, helps you envision what is this better future or better state that you're trying to get to. So the V2 Mom, it's an acronym for vision, values, method, obstacles, and measures. So it sounds a lot like the SMART goal framework,
I'll never
right?
remember that.
Yeah, go to my website, you'll find it. So the vision part helps us get past what's right in front of us, right? So my nonprofit partners are typically worried about budget, worried about time, worried about the current crisis, worried about whatever is going on in the world around them, whether that be economic or environmental issues. And this helps us move our thinking out of that ambiguous space, which breeds anxiety, into this space of somewhat certainty. So for example, one topic might be diversifying our board. That's something that's very, it's on a lot of nonprofit leaders' minds, and they're already taking action on it right now. But sometimes we can kind of get in our own way. We can trip things up, right? So this tool helps our nonprofit leaders look at, well, if I don't worry about today and I just think about, a year from now, 3 years from now, what is my ideal vision? I can then backfill. What are the values that I'm going to use in pursuing that vision? What are the methods that will take to get me there? What are the obstacles I might see? And the measures, how will I know when I've been successful? And that tool can kind of unearth some of the gaps in the system, because as you're thinking through those values, as you're thinking through those methods, you'll see, oh wait, I have these capacities to handle 4 out of 5 of the steps I need to take, but I really need the help of somebody else in this other regard. And so it's a great tool. It's great for individual thinking, one-on-ones, groups, boards, universal.
That's great. And it seems like it's a pretty scientific approach of how you would figure out whether or not you needed help. And speaking of individuals, one of the things I did with my wife is we went to this values discovery kit that we learned about from you. And it was really cool because, there's all these different opportunities to get involved in nonprofits, to give, even if you're a young person that's just getting going and you want to give $10 a month or sacrifice 1 cup of coffee for a nonprofit. What I thought was cool about it is that it really helped separate the what are those things that are part of what was put onto you from your upbringing or your background or whatever, and sort of the perception of like, here's what I should be doing versus here's the things that I truly enjoy doing. Or here's where I like to give, where it really does mean a lot to me. And I thought that was pretty cool how it really did a good job of segmenting, because obviously your psychology background, we're all, a big part of all of us is where we came from and those values and things like that. But it's nice to be able to stop and say, okay, who am I? And what are those things? And then also, like, what are those things that are external to me that are put on me?
Exactly. And I feel so strongly in this. deep and personal way that the power of a personal mission statement, which is just what you described, identifying our personal values, putting them into shape where we say, these are the things that I stand for. This is the lens that I want to approach my life through. It can be the most powerful experience, just whether it's that you're considering a new job, whether it's that you're thinking about how to approach a difficult meeting, or you're planning a family vacation. These personal values, they layer on top of every moment of our day. And, my work with my book on the personal mission statement, my values discovery kit, all of that really speaks to that human level. I think that the summary of our chat today really is that, I just love giving people the power to do their best in whatever domain that they're in. And my work with values and the mission statements really speak to that.
Well, there's no doubt that working in the nonprofit sector is truly a fulfilling and rewarding place to be. And I certainly salute you and all the work that you've done to grow your help center and all of the work that you're doing to help the nonprofits that you're working with. Thank you again for joining us, Dr. Socash, Emilie Socash. And where can we follow you if we want to learn more about what you're up to, learn from you, your thought leadership? Where can we follow you?
So best place to reach me is on LinkedIn, and you can find me Emilie, Emilie, Socash, Socash. And you can also visit my website, nonprofithelpcenter.com. And if you're interested in learning more about our online learning platform, it's at meritnonprofit.com.
Well, thank you so much, Emilie. And you can find all of the Law of Relevancy episodes and follow what we're up to anywhere where podcasts are found, across all of our social media channels, and also the Bake More Pies social media channels. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.